right, so welcome everyone. We are on our third session for tonight, and we would like to welcome Penn State Representative Lauire Wax and University of South Carolina Rep Kate Henchy for our big universities topic. So if they are going a little too fast or you're not able to copy things down, then we want to make sure that you have access to it. So we are recording the session. So I would hand it over to Lauire Wax and Kate Henchy. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having us tonight. I'm Lauire Wax. I am the Regional Admissions Counselor for Penn State for the New York metro area. And I look forward to being able to visit you in person again someday, hopefully soon. Give it to Kate.
Awesome. Yeah, so my name's Kate Henchy. I am with the University of South Carolina. I cover the entire state of New York as well as majority of Connecticut. I also grew up in New York and I'm pretty familiar with the area. So nothing's gonna really throw me off. So Laurie and I represent two pretty large universities that we engage with a lot of the students at Iona Prep. So it's pretty nice to be able to talk about this topic together and with so many of you tonight. This is, when we talk about how we wanted to approach this, there were so many things that we wanted to cover. And so hopefully we'll be able to get through a lot. Hopefully we won't talk too fast, but then again, we got a lot of New Yorkers in the house. So hopefully talking too fast won't throw you off your game too much. We're going to kind of start with advantages, move into admissions processes, and we'll throw in a little bit of information about our own schools, but we're going to try and keep it all pretty general things that will apply, not just to our schools, but to all big schools in general, because there are a lot of schools out there. So starting with advantages of big universities. I myself have always been drawn to big schools. When I applied to undergrad, when I applied to grad school, when I've worked for schools before, it's always been larger institutions. Larger institutions tend to have a larger selection of majors. So this is great, especially if students aren't 100% sure what they're interested in, or even if they know what they want, but they kind of want a big selection of electives to choose from, or even just to kind of be able to dabble a little bit and kind of be able to graduate with a little bit of those extras under their belt. There tend to be a wider selection of extracurricular organizations. Schools like Penn State and South Carolina also will have the number of school organizations will be in the several hundreds. And so at South Carolina, I know it's over 500. I believe Penn State is somewhere in like the 500-600s as well. It's something crazy. We couldn't look
about 1,200.
Yeah, okay, I was even off with that. Large institutions will tend to have a lot of research opportunities, especially when you're talking about public schools. That tend to be a pretty big staple in that our faculty members are also engaging in research, but always know that first and foremost, their job is as educators. But having those research components tends to be another way for your students to engage. My favorite saying is always that you can always make a big school feel small, but you can't make a small school feel big. So when students ask me why I'm drawn to big schools, I say that, from when I was graduating high school, I wanted to go to a school that I could walk to class in the morning when I'm still like half asleep, groggy, haven't had coffee, and I'm like really antisocial, don't want to say hi to anybody and see nobody that I know. But then after class, when I'm more awake, I can walk back to my dorm and see 15 people that I know. And that was the ideal situation for me. And I've always found that large universities have that. The last advantage of a big university, and we may be a tiny bit biased on this one, but we think that big universities have pretty unrivaled school spirit. I don't know about you, but I tend to think that, the Gamecocks have some pretty amazing school spirit, and I'm pretty sure Laurie would argue that there's like a Penn State football game. I'm going to pass it over to Laurie you can add anything on and talk about other factors and admissions considerations.
Okay, well, absolutely. We are on the same page with the advantages of large universities. And one last thing that probably should have been on the slide, but our alumni networks are really pretty amazing. And that is something that when you graduate from a large university, you're really joining a family for life. Penn State happens to have, I believe it's the largest alumni network with 700,000 plus alumni that are active. And I'm sure South Carolina has something similar. And what that means is that you for life have a social network and a professional network that you can always use as a resource. So now that we've hopefully sold you on all the advantages of big universities, at least shared our enthusiasm for them, we'll talk a little bit about the college admissions process and what schools are looking for. And one thing that I do want to point out is that there are some things that are kind of universal, but pretty much every school does things just slightly their own way. So it really is a good idea to, when you're going through this process and you have your list of schools that you're considering, keep a spreadsheet, reach out to the different schools and find out different deadlines, different application plans. Sometimes applying early works to your advantage, sometimes it doesn't. So find out from each specific university that you're applying to what their specific way of doing things is, just so that you are taking advantage of the opportunity to put yourself in the best possible situation to get admitted. So the things that we are all looking for, and I think they're kind of in order of importance for big universities. It might be a little bit different with some much smaller universities, but first and foremost, for most universities, and certainly with the big universities, it's your high school transcript. It's your academic record that we are looking for. We're looking at your grades, we're looking at the rigor of your course load, and we'll go more into that in a minute, but that is definitely the factor that we are considering the most. In years past, the ACT and SAT scores were also a huge factor. We're going to also go into more detail on that in a little bit, but that is something that, as every school this year pretty much was test optional, it really just made the transcript even something that we were looking into even further. So something to keep in mind. Other factors include the college essay, letters of recommendation, extracurricular activities, any special talents you might have, and something we like to call demonstrated interest. So we will go into all of those in a little bit more detail. So I'll pass it on to you, Kate.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only thing that I typically would include on what Lori just covered would be, every single school that, whether it is your student is attending or if it is a parent, your student should always be checking these things. And, Lori suggested a spreadsheet to keep track of it. And I always say the same thing. I'm very much about, keeping track of things with lists, and I find a spreadsheet works great. Large schools have a lot of things in common, and 100% of the way, academics will always be the most important factor. Arguably, at every college, academics are the most important factor with an admissions decision, but a couple things will always be different. You'll find at some schools, recommendations are not taken at all. So at a couple of large schools, that has been a bit of a trend. So we are one of those schools, just more of a personal anecdote. We don't accept any recommendations. We will look at and we read what your counselor sends, and that's kind of it. And so that is always when I tell students that the essay becomes even more important. So of that list, we might say academics are most important, but that doesn't mean there's anything on that list that's not important at all. So on that high school transcript that is at that top of that list, I 100% agree with that placement, because when you hear transcript, it sounds like it's just one item for us to look at, but truly, a high school transcript could take a really long time to look at because there's so many factors in it. I know one person in the chat mentioned, like, well, what if a student has transferred, so they have credits from 2 different schools? That could take more time to look at, because when we are doing that, if I'm looking at a transcript for a student from Iona Prep, I'm very familiar with the curriculum. I know the courses that are offered. I know in terms of, honors, AP, college credit classes, what is available. But if somebody else in my office is looking, or somebody at a school unfamiliar, they are looking into that. They're not going to automatically look at your student's transcript and say, why hasn't Michael taken more IB classes? Well, because that's not an option to him. We're very fair. These things are included in part of our job description, quite literally, that we have to research high schools. So that you should always know. But what is important to know is that the rigor of those courses is important. We want to make sure your student is taking the courses appropriate for them. And to that, we will always default to their school counselor. So that conversation should be had. But when I'm looking at a transcript, I want to see that your student is taking all of their core courses, that they are taking some rigorous courses in there, that they're doing well on those courses. Depending on the school they are applying to or the major, some schools will also look to see those subject-specific grades. So if your student is applying to business at some schools, they may focus in and look more at like those math grades to see how they're doing. Same with like a science program or a pre-med and nursing, they may look at science grades a little more closely. And then also some state requirements. So for us being a public school, we have to make sure that every student, no matter where they are applying for, they have to have taken the classes that the state of South Carolina requires. Lucky for us and lucky for you, they're pretty much the same, that New York requires, these graduation requires, and so does South Carolina. So I don't have to worry about it. Lori, I'm going to turn it over to you to address anything else you were thinking on here.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Kate. So I would definitely agree to that, and definitely on the state requirements. Pennsylvania is pretty much the same as New York, but I formerly worked at a university in Massachusetts. Their requirements were 4 years of math, no ifs, ands, or buts. So you don't want to, I would imagine that at Iona Prep, you are encouraged to take math your senior year anyway, but we highly encourage that for anybody. You don't want to limit your options. As far as the subject-specific grades, definitely that is more of a factor, and I'm about to get into test scores, but especially without test scores, we're looking a little bit more carefully at your subject-specific grades. One thing to just keep in mind is what you think your GPA is may not actually be what we think your GPA is. We're looking at all of your classes that you took and the level of those classes and recalculating our own weighting, because that's the only way we can keep things even among different high schools. Some schools weight heavily, some don't. And so we just look at the core course that you took. We're looking more at your actual core courses than your electives, and the grades that you got in them, and then the level of difficulty. So just keep in mind, there might be a little bit of a variation. And then for certain majors, you want to make sure if you're going into engineering, you want to make sure you at least had pre-calculus, ideally calculus. So just keep that in mind if there's things that you're interested in. And now is a good time before you are finalized with your senior schedule to look into, if there's something that you want to do, is there some course you should be taking? So let me just move to standardized tests. So as I mentioned earlier, standardized tests was a very big factor in the college admissions process. Now, due to COVID, we have all gone test optional. Some schools are, many schools are still figuring out how long they're going to be test optional. I know at Penn State, we're going to be test optional through 2023, which should give us enough time to see if students that we admitted without test scores are as successful as the students have been in the past that we admitted with test scores. So, and that's something to keep in mind. I mean, we are looking to admit students. We're admissions counselors. We're not rejection counselors. We want to admit you, but we want you to be successful. So that is really and truly what we are looking into. So without the test scores, we are looking very carefully at subject grades. But my recommendation with the tests at this point, you are in a position where you are likely going to still be applying with test optional schools. So my recommendation is take the test. I would take both the SAT and the ACT, see which one you do better on, and maybe then focus on that, maybe take it a second time. If you have phenomenal scores, it will absolutely help your application. If, however, your scores do not reflect your grades, they do not indicate your strength as a student, do not submit them. It will not hurt you. We will rely more heavily on your academic record and possibly look at some other factors a little bit more closely. But if a school tells you they're test optional, they really are test optional. And submitting poor scores because you think it will be better is actually not going to help you at all. It will hurt you. So definitely try it, see if it speaks to your strengths, and then you can make a decision. Most schools will give you their middle 50% ranges, so you can get a real good sense of whether or not you should submit your test scores. If your test scores are on the high end of that middle 50% range, then by all means submit them. If you're on the low end or below, maybe you don't want to submit them. So, and reach out to us. We as counselors love to hear from students. We are happy to help you through this process. If you have any questions, just reach out. We'll tell you what your best situation for our particular schools are. One little thing I wanted to mention is super scoring. In case you don't know what that is, some schools will take your highest math portion of the SAT, let's say, and your highest English portion from different sittings. Unfortunately, at Penn State, we do not do that. We do not super score, but it is something that many schools will do. So something to keep in mind. As far as, how many times, I would say probably take it more than once. Do not take it more than 3 times. At that point, you're not really going to change at all. So you might jump up from the first to the second, maybe even a little bit to the third, and then that's it. But you're in the fortunate position of being able to decide whether or not you do submit test scores.
Yeah, I think Laurie pretty much stole everything I would have said about test scores. The only thing I would say is for anybody that is a junior or the parent of a junior on this call right now, you're definitely going to find you have to check with individual schools at this point when it comes to those, like, are you test optional, are you not? And you're going to kind of find schools are in one of 2 camps. Either they made the decision last summer that they were going to be test optional for multiple years, or they don't know yet. And a lot of those big schools don't know because so many things play into that decision, and so many people have to say yes or no to that first. So like, Florida state schools don't have any sort of update. South Carolina doesn't. Alabama does not have an update. A lot of those bigger schools that are also big within this area, you kind of have to hang tight. But I think the one thing is, yes, it does not hurt to take the test. But at the same time, if it does hurt you mentally, emotionally, physically to take that test, there are so many great test optional schools out there. So if it is putting you at risk in any way, don't take it, And I know you're looking at me thinking, your school might not be test optional. And I know, but I also care, and my entire staff will care more about you and your child and their well-being. That's kind of all I've got with that. As far as essays go, college essays, I always tell students, are my favorite part of their application. Academics may weigh more, but college essays are the more fun part. Laurie and I have done so many panels together about writing college essays, so I'm pretty sure she would feel a very similar way to me about this. I think the thing is that you can have multiple students from the same school or the same area that have taken the same classes, get the same grades, have been in the same clubs, are just kind of similar students, but you can't have 2 students write the exact same essay. So this is truly the student's time to stand out. I will tell you, I can absolutely tell, and any counselor will tell you, they can tell if a student did not write their essay. Give your child time and give them support, but make sure they're the ones writing it, because this piece is what makes the student stand out. Is there anything else to finish up, Laurie? I know we're running out of time.
I was just going to say, we would be happy to bring our essay writing workshop to you. It's a whole other one, but yeah, it is your chance to say what to speak in your own voice. And if you haven't had the opportunity to speak to the person reading your application, which you may, but if you don't, it is your chance to say, to tell us about you. Just moving on to extracurricular activities. Again, there are, we're looking at the whole picture. And while the grades are the most important, and certainly the essay lets us speak to you, it's certainly, we both have these, we have 1,200 clubs and organizations, and University of South Carolina has whatever, 600. We want our students engaged in all of these clubs. That's what makes our vibrant campus life so vibrant, is all these different activities that students get involved with. So we love to see students that are engaged and assume that they're going to be engaged when they get to college. Now, keep in mind, not everybody has the opportunity to join school clubs. You may have to work to help, support your family, or to help save money for college. That is super valuable. I mean, we look at students that work and still manage to, take their classes and do well in their classes. And that's really valuable. We really respect that. So make sure that that is included in your resume. It, again, does not have to be school clubs. If you have responsibilities at home, if you have to watch younger siblings, or you have to help with a grandparent, we really value that too. So anything that you do, we're looking to see how you spend your time. We know that this year was an exceptionally rough year, that a lot of activities didn't take place because of COVID. That's okay. Tell us what you did do. Tell us what you might, do with your time. Talk about things that you would like to do when you get to school. One, going back to the essay a little bit, a lot of colleges, ours is optional. We have a personal statement that's optional, but take advantage of that. Never make anything that's optional, do it, because it gives you a chance to talk about why you might want to go to a certain school and what you would be involved with at that certain school. So even if you weren't able to do the things you wanted to do, you can express what your passions are and what you would, have done. And again, anything that you do has value. So keep that in mind.
So we're just about out of time. So I don't want to take too much time, but I think letters of recommendation, if I kept it short and sweet, pay attention to whether the school asks for them, choose very carefully. And I always say, make sure you plan that ahead and give them enough time.
Sorry, a little
All right.
mute button. Oh, no, I was just going to quickly end. And again, we also do not ask for letters of recommendation except for our honors program. So again, find out, just demonstrated interest. Technically, we do not track interest. And what that means, there are some schools that actually track interest. And what that means is we're paying attention to if you visit campus or sign up for a virtual visit, or visit us when we visit, or join us when we visit you at school, or even something as simple as opening up your emails. We are all able to track that. So, even though it's not technically what we use to consider our decisions, we are human. When somebody's reached out to us, when somebody's shown a lot of interest, and we really feel that a student is eager to attend our school, certainly wherever there's, if you're deciding between two equal students and one has really expressed interest, it's only human that you're going to be looking towards the student that expressed interest. So we'll be more than happy to talk more about that if you have any other questions. And I don't know if Kate, you just want to mention the application plans.
Yep. I think it's just important, pay attention. Each school will have different application plans. So, big universities tend to have more. I always remember early action is just you have taken action earlier and sent your application, but early decision means you have decided, and this is you are committing where you want to go. Regular decision is just, you've decided you are applying here. Enrolling admission would mean that a school continues to accept applications. There is no finite deadline.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to state that here at Iona Prep, from our freshman and sophomore parents, because the junior parents have already gone through this, we do offer the students an opportunity to take the pre-ACT sophomore year and the PSAT junior year. So then they're able to decide with their counselor what might be the better fit. So we don't see a lot of students taking both in junior year, especially now, but we are recommending students to take the exam because if you need it, it's better to have it than in the senior year not have it, and then you're scrambling in October, November, December. So I'll open it up for questions. If you have questions, please write them in the chat and I will direct it to one of our reps. So one of the questions about picking a major, say a student is undecided, how is there things at the college that can help a student decide on a major?
Yes, absolutely. I'll start here. This is actually one of the questions that I always say that if a student is undecided, this is the key question to ask colleges because it will be drastically different. You will find at some colleges, you start in like an exploratory major program where you'll have like a preset like course assignments that like they've selected the classes you'll take each semester. You'll have some colleges where they'll ask like, do you have a general subject idea you're interested in? And you'll kind of start in a college. At South Carolina, we do it based on advising. And so students are assigned undeclared major advisor who their full-time job is working with students that are just kind of undecided. And they kind of go through steps along that way and they start their advising the summer before coming to college. So it will look drastically different depending on the college, but big universities get a lot of undecided applicants because of a lot of the reasons we said before. So I think that's a great question. Trying to answer very generally, but keep that question and use it every single time that you or your student approaches a college they're interested in.
I would just keep in mind too that so many students change their major. So about a third of the students at Penn State start undecided. So you're in good company. Do not stress if you don't know what you want to do with your life. It's really okay. We have a whole division of undergraduate studies that about a third of the students start in. They're undecided. They spend their first year taking general education requirements, exploring different possible majors, working with advisors. It works out. It's hard to know. There's so many things out there that you have never been exposed to. So do not stress if you don't know what you want to major in. And as with Kate said, just find out from each school you're looking at what their process is.
Thank you. So the next question is regarding the class size. And I'm just going to put two together, actually. The class size at a big school compared to a small school. And how would someone get support at a bigger school if they needed it?
So, okay. So there's a range of class sizes, even at a huge university, because even though we have 46,000 undergraduate students, we have 275 different majors. So students are spread out. So you're definitely going to have, for entry classes that are prerequisites for a lot of classes, maybe intro to psych is going to be 400 people in a lecture hall. But even at that point, the professor's teaching the class, but there will be breakout sessions with TAs for you to have discussion groups and go over what you've learned. Every professor has office hours. So you have the ability to meet your professors and have one-on-one experiences. And some freshman classes are going to be really small, writing seminars. But as you get up in your major and in the upper level classes, they tend to be much smaller, even at a large university. But there are resources as far as getting tutoring help and any kind of help that you need. And again, the professors are all accessible at pretty much every university. It's just a matter of you taking the time to reach out and make the effort to, go and get to know them.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to what Lori said is that, one of the big things, big support of large universities is that, it's a large place and there's an office or a person for every job. So there is typically tutoring on every campus. There'll be every professor has office hours. That's like every school. there are resources. There will be a student disability resource center. So if a student has, you know, ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, or even if they've broken a foot and they need help getting across campus, whatever it is. But the one thing that is absolutely certain and your students need to take into consideration is at a big school, they need to be able to self-advocate. If they cannot be the person to say, like, I need extra help in this class, I am going to go to the tutoring office, or like, I am struggling in this class, I should go talk to the professor. That is something to seriously consider, because at a large school, I mean, college, nobody's gonna wake them up in the morning and do that for them. But especially at a large school, they need to know that all of these supports are there, but they need to have that ability to ask, where is this office? The second that they can ask, where is this office, the university will hand them a million resources. But it's just asking themselves, will I be able to ask for help when I need it? If the answer is yes, perfect. A large university can give them everything they need and more.
Well, I want to thank both of you for joining us tonight. That was really informative. And for those that didn't get the questions answered, you're more than welcome to email the counselor at Iona Prep, or as you see on the screen, you have a couple of resources here. So again, I really appreciate everyone tonight joining us for the 3 sessions. And if you joined last night, again, thank you. But big round of applause for Lauire Wax and Kate Henchy. We really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch. Take care and have a great evening.